The wine glass in her hand was shaking so hard, I heard the ice cubes clink before I saw her face. It was the hospital's annual donor gala, the kind of night where everyone wears their best suit and pretends the hospital isn't actually bleeding money. I had been a financial analyst at Brennan Regional Medical Center for almost a year, and Dr. Evelyn Marsh was the chief operating officer, the woman who had turned down 3 of my budget proposals in a row without so much as looking up from her tablet. People called her the Iron Lady of Finance behind her back, not as a compliment. She was standing near the dessert table, alone, in a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her hand was trembling around that wine glass like she was holding onto the edge of something. Before I tell you what happened next, if stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe and leave a comment telling me about a time someone surprised you when you least expected it. It helps this channel more than you know. My name is Nathaniel Cross, and 2 years ago I was 3 weeks away from quitting the only job that had ever given my family a real shot at stability. I grew up outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a house where the heat got turned off more winters than I'd like to admit. My mom worked the overnight shift at a distribution warehouse, and my dad drove a delivery truck until his knees gave out. Neither of them finished college, but they made sure I understood 2 things. Numbers don't lie, and you don't walk away from a paycheck unless you absolutely have to. When I landed the analyst position at Brennan Regional, I called my mother crying in the parking lot of my apartment complex. It felt like the kind of break our family didn't get. Hospital finance isn't glamorous, but it's stable, and stable was something I had never had growing up. Working under Dr. Marsh broke that feeling apart pretty quickly. She wasn't cruel, not exactly. She was precise in a way that felt like cruelty if you weren't used to it. Every spreadsheet I sent her came back with red markup. Every meeting she sat through, she said maybe 4 sentences total, and when she did speak, it was usually to point out something I'd missed. I started dreading the sound of her email notification. 6 months in, I had a draft resignation letter sitting in my email drafts folder. I'd open it some nights after dinner, read it over, close my laptop without sending it. My girlfriend at the time, Priya, kept telling me to just talk to HR, get reassigned to a different department, but something in me wasn't ready to give up, even while I was halfway out the door. Then the hospital announced the annual gala, the one where they invite donors, board members, and senior staff to mingle in the atrium under string lights and pretend healthcare administration is glamorous for one night. Attendance for management track employees was strongly encouraged, which in hospital language means mandatory. I almost didn't go. I'd finished the resignation letter that week, sitting in my studio apartment on a Tuesday night with the laptop screen glowing, my cursor hovering over the send button for almost 20 minutes before I closed the lid instead, and told myself I'd decide after the gala. The atrium that night looked like a different building entirely. They'd brought in round tables with white linens, a string quartet near the fountain, servers carrying trays of seared scallops that cost more per plate than I made in a day. Donors in tuxedos laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny, and board members shook hands like they were running for office. Dr. Marsh arrived almost 40 minutes late, and when she walked in, conversations actually paused. She had this presence, even exhausted, even distracted, that made a room shift around her. She wore the navy dress, hair pulled back, and from across the room, she looked like she belonged on a magazine cover for executive leadership. But something was off. I noticed it before I understood why I was noticing it. Her shoulders were too tight. She kept glancing toward the exit doors like she was calculating how fast she could leave without it looking strange. And that wine glass in her hand wasn't being drunk from. It was just being held white-knuckled. I told myself it wasn't my business. I got a drink, found a spot near the wall, and watched the band start up a slow number as couples drifted toward the open floor space near the fountain. That's when I saw her standing completely alone at the edge of it, watching everyone else dance, looking like she wanted to disappear into the marble floor. Nobody approached her. Of course nobody approached her. She was the woman who'd made grown surgeons nervous in budget meetings. I don't fully know what made me do it. Maybe it was the resignation letter sitting unsent on my laptop. Maybe it was just some reckless thing in me that night. I walked across that atrium, my heart slamming against my ribs, and held out my hand. "Dr. Marsh," I said, "would you like to dance?" She looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. For a second, I thought she was going to say something cutting, the kind of thing that would follow me around the office for months. Instead, her eyes just widened slightly, and after what felt like a full minute, she set the wine glass down on a passing tray and put her hand in mine. Her palm was ice cold and shaking. We moved onto the floor together, and I felt eyes on us immediately, the kind of stares that come with disbelief. The CO of the hospital, dancing with a third-year analyst nobody important knew by name. I didn't care. I was too focused on the fact that her hand wouldn't stop trembling against mine. We swayed slowly to the music, not really talking, and I could feel the tension in her shoulders like I were pulled too tight. When she finally lifted her eyes to mine, there was something there I had never once seen in a budget meeting. Fear. Real, unguarded fear, the kind people spend years learning how to hide. For the first time since I'd started working at Brennan Regional, Dr. Evelyn Marsh looked like an actual person instead of a title. Neither of us spoke for a long stretch. The band kept playing, something slow with a saxophone weaving through it, and around us, the party noise blurred into background static. I didn't ask her what was wrong. Some instinct told me that pushing would close her up faster than anything. So I just let the silence sit there, let my hand stay steady under hers, and let the music do whatever work it was going to do. Eventually, she took a breath, the kind that shudders a little on the way in, like she was gathering courage from somewhere deep. Her voice, when it came, didn't sound anything like the voice that tore apart my spreadsheets in meetings. It was quiet, almost young. She told me that 2 hours before the gala, she'd gotten a call from the hospital's largest insurance partner informing her they were terminating the contract, effective in 90 days. That single contract covered nearly 40% of the hospital's reimbursable patient volume. Losing it meant layoffs, department closures, maybe even the ICU expansion getting shelved indefinitely. The board would be calling an emergency session by Monday morning, and as COO, she was the one who would have to walk in and explain how this happened on her watch. She wasn't angry when she said it. She sounded hollowed out, like something had been scraped clean inside her. I built my entire career on never letting this hospital fail, she said, staring somewhere past my shoulder, and tonight I don't know how to fix it. I felt something shift in my own chest as she said that. All those nights I'd spent stewing over red markup on my spreadsheets, feeling singled out, feeling small, suddenly looked different. She wasn't tearing my work apart because she didn't see me. She was carrying something that made every decimal point matter more than I understood. I told her, right there on the dance floor, that I'd thought she hated my work, that I'd written a resignation letter because I believed I wasn't good enough for her standards. She stopped moving for a second, looked at me like I'd said something that genuinely surprised her. Then she shook her head, slow, almost sad. She told me she'd noticed my projections from my very first month, that she pushed harder on my numbers specifically, because she saw something in how I approached risk modeling that the rest of the department didn't have. She said her silence wasn't dismissal. It was her trying to figure out how to mentor someone without losing her authority in a department that already didn't take her seriously enough as a woman 12 years into the job. I was hard on you because I thought you could be the best analyst this hospital has had in a decade, she said. Not because I wanted you gone. Hearing that felt like a door swinging open in a hallway I thought had been sealed shut for good. Then her voice dropped, quieter than before, like she was deciding whether to say the next part at all. She told me she'd walked past my office that afternoon before the gala and seen my screen still open. She hadn't meant to read it, she said, but the words "Dear Human Resources" were enough to stop her cold in the doorway. She read just enough to understand what it was before she kept walking, and she said that was the real reason her hands hadn't stopped shaking all night. Not just the lost contract. The thought that the one person on her team she trusted to actually fight for the hospital's future was about to walk out the door. She looked at me directly then, and for the first time, the Iron Lady of Brennan Regional looked almost afraid to keep talking. I'm not good at this, she said. Telling people they matter. I've spent my whole career thinking results would speak for themselves. Her hand tightened around mine just slightly, but I don't want to lose you. Not over a letter I wasn't supposed to see. Then she said it, the thing I still think about 2 years later. Please don't leave me. She caught herself almost immediately like she heard how it sounded. Not the hospital, not this department. Just don't leave. The honesty in her voice didn't leave room for doubt. Standing there under those string lights, surrounded by donors who had no idea what was happening 12 feet away from their champagne toasts, it didn't feel like a hospital gala anymore. It felt like two exhausted people standing at the edge of something neither of us fully understood yet. I made a decision right there, before the song even ended. I'm not quitting, I told her. Not because it's easy, because I don't think you should have to carry this contract loss by yourself on Monday morning. The months after that were brutal in ways neither of us had words for at the time. We lost the insurance contract exactly the way the call had warned us we would. The board held 3 emergency sessions in 2 weeks. We had to present a restructuring plan that cut 2 departments and froze hiring across the hospital for a full fiscal year. There were nights I stayed until 11 building projection models with Dr. Marsh sitting across the table from me, both of us running on cold coffee and granola bars from the vending machine. But something else happened during those months, too. She started asking for my input before meetings instead of after. She brought me into rooms with the board that an analyst at my level had no business being in, and she'd nod at me to speak when she wanted a number defended. She started saying we instead of I in emails. Small thing. Big thing, actually, once you noticed it. About 4 months in, she stopped me in the hallway outside her office and told me almost offhand that she'd recommended me for a promotion to senior analyst. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there holding my coffee like an idiot until she half smiled, which from her was practically fireworks, and walked back into her office. 2 years later, Brennan Regional is in better financial shape than it's been in over a decade. We landed 2 new insurance partnerships that more than replaced what we lost. The ICU expansion broke ground last spring, and last month the hospital board approved funding for a community health initiative that Dr. Marsh and I pitched together. She's still demanding. She still marks up my spreadsheets in red ink without mercy. But now there's a kind of trust underneath all that precision that wasn't there before. At the hospital's holiday dinner this past December, she stood up in front of the entire finance department and told the story of the contract loss, the restructuring, all of it, and then she said something I wasn't expecting. She said the hospital survived that year not because of any single decision she made, but because someone chose to stand beside her on a night when she expected to stand alone. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. Everyone at that table already knew. I think about that dance more than I probably should, not because anything romantic ever came of it, because it didn't, and honestly, that was never the point. It was about something simpler and maybe harder to find. The idea that the people who seem the most untouchable are usually carrying something heavy enough to break them. And sometimes all it takes to change 2 lives is someone willing to walk across a room and offer their hand. If you've ever had a moment like that, someone who showed up for you when you least expected it, or a time you showed up for someone else without knowing why, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And your stories might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.